Sylvie's going to take the phone calls.
All right, welcome to Denali Events, a brand new public outreach program hosted by Denali National Park and Preserve here in interior Alaska. My name is Jamie Milliken, and we're pleased you're here with us today. Through this new venue, we hope to bring you 15-minute conversations with many special guests through this summer and beyond. What's really special about this platform is the viewers in faraway places have a chance to interact with us and ask questions of our guests right here live in real time. You can post your questions on our live stream chat box or in a comment thread on our Facebook page. If you want to watch any of these events with captions, we are hosting a simultaneous identical feed on the park website that is accompanied by live captions. You can find the links to that page throughout our listings on Livestream and at the park website itself at www.nps.gov/DENA. And if you miss an event, don't worry. Archived versions are available to stream on demand both on Livestream and the park website. This morning we are speaking with our Sled Dog Kennels Manager, Jennifer Raffaeli, and Zahnie, our newest canine ranger, and floating around here somewhere is Mom, Sylvie. All right, well, we're going to start with some questions for Jennifer this morning. And the first one I'm going to ask is, how many canine rangers do we have here at our kennels here in Denali?
Currently, we have 31 dogs plus Zahnie. That's 32.
All right. And since Zahnie is our newest canine ranger, what's our method of adding new canine rangers to the ranks here in Denali?
That is a good question, one we often get from our visitors. We only do one breeding per year. We just want enough puppies to replace our retiring sled dogs. So typically when a dog turns about 9 years old, they let us know they're ready to retire, and we'll adopt them out. So we usually have about 3 or 4 dogs ready each year for retirement, and so we want 3 or 4 puppies to take their place. A litter can be anywhere from 1 to 16 puppies, and so if we have extra puppies, we have just a few other kennels in Alaska that are also breeding these large freight-style dogs, and we will share our extra puppies with them, but we're not breeding puppies to adopt out as pets or to the general public. Our puppies, I would say 99.9% of them grow up to become working sled dogs. It's not like other working dogs that have a high rate of being cut from the team. These guys are bred and born and raised to want to run and pull a sled, and they're usually very successful at that.
All righty, excellent. So since we do have 32 canine rangers here in the park now, counting Zahnie, what is the mission? What are the tasks that these dogs do here in the park, both summer and winter?
So the summertime job, which most people are familiar with, is to be ambassadors of dog mushing. They are greeting 50,000 fans and visitors who come and want to meet sled dogs and learn about what is dog mushing and why does Denali have a dog kennels. And in winter, their job is entirely different. They're not doing demonstrations for the public. They are out in the 2 million acres of designated wilderness throughout this park. And I think one of the main things that justifies the use of the dog teams in Denali is not only the history and tradition of using our dog teams. Our first superintendent, Harry Karstens, bought our first 7 sled dogs back in 1922 to patrol the park boundaries, and we've been using dog teams ever since. So that's a huge aspect, is just continuing that history and tradition. But the other aspect is very much thanks to the 1964 Wilderness Act, which we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of this year. And the Wilderness Act sets aside areas of land as the highest level of land protection that we have, and it says no motorized transport is allowed. So the dogs are used as an alternate to airplanes, helicopters, snow machines, or any other motorized transport throughout the 2 million acres of designated wilderness that's basically the original park boundary of Denali. And we're really project driven, so it's different projects that'll help us determine where we go and what we're doing throughout the winter.
All right. Well, speaking of some of those projects, what are some of the projects you all have done with the dogs in the past few years, and maybe some of the ones that are on horizon for the future this year?
Some of the highlight projects, we often work with researchers in the park who are wanting to gather data throughout the winter months, and we can help transport them and their equipment to remote locations that might actually be really difficult to access in summertime. But in winter, when everything is frozen, all that vegetation and swampy tundra and bog is frozen over and covered with snow, it's actually relatively efficient travel by dog team or by skis. So we'll take those researchers out. In the last few years, we've supported a researcher who was doing a study on wolverine populations in the park, trying to get an estimate of baseline populations and individual wolverines. We supported sound station monitoring, so our soundscape scientist, David Betchkal, has set up sound stations throughout the park and along the boundaries to get recordings of ambient sound. We've helped him transport his equipment and gather some data. For the last few years, we've been supporting a mesocarnivore study, gathering scat and tracks throughout the park to help a researcher associated with University of Alaska Fairbanks looking at population dynamics between our wolves and then smaller mesocarnivores in the park, lynx and coyotes and things like that. In addition to a lot of the scientific research that we do, we also support a lot of heavy hauling projects. So that's what these dogs are born and raised for, and they love the heavy hauling as well. So we've helped haul for trail crew when they need equipment for building or rebuilding trails or transporting equipment back out from the field once they're done using it. We've helped haul for our mountaineering rangers when they're doing north side patrols of Denali. The traditional access route usually use dog teams to haul their supplies in, so we try and still do that.
All right, excellent. So speaking of being out on the trail with those dogs, what is a typical day like on the trail out with the dogs?
That is a great question. It's definitely my favorite part of the job. And a typical day on the trail, we're usually out for a week and up to 5 weeks at a time. So once we head out, we want to just keep breaking trail further in the park. We'll usually be at a historic ranger patrol cabin, and those are scattered about every 20 miles throughout the park. And that's a typical day's travel. That's pretty easy travel for the dogs. We'll stop at our patrol cabins. We try and get there before dark, which in winter is usually by about 3 p.m. And we'll set the dogs up on a drop line around the cabin. They sleep out in the snow, which is something that people always wonder, where do the dogs go? And they're sleeping right there in the snow. They've got no issues with that. A couple of lucky dogs will get to come inside the cabin and hang out with us for the night. And they love the attention, but it's honestly a little bit hot for them in there. And then we'll start the endless task of making water for the dogs. Of course, we don't have water at the cabins, so we're typically melting gallons upon gallons of snow. We're usually feeding about 10 gallons of kibble and water to our 20 or 30 dogs. So that takes several hours of melting snow and preparing dog food and then feeding the dogs. And someone on the kennel staff is also working on preparing the human food for the night. And our cabins are pre-stocked with our supplies so that we don't have to be hauling all of that when we head out. We can be hauling whatever our project is. Hopefully, on a good night, we're in bed by 9 or 10. And then we're up the next morning at 6, and we do some stretching first thing in the morning and then heat up the dog water and human food. And we try and be on the trail by 9 a.m., which is first light in winter.
All right.
And that involves a lot of cleaning up and packing everything up. Hopefully our stuff has dried overnight and we're ready for another day on the trail. And we'll unhook the dog teams. Typically we'll have one person who's either skiing or ski joring in front of the team to break the trail, set the route for the day, and the rest of us are following along. And that skier or ski jorer is also working often on collecting whatever project data we're working on. So we're on the trail all day, stopping and snacking the dogs. Usually every 2 to 3 hours we'll look and see if they need snacks. And their typical snack is what we call a fat ball, which is a lard with their kibble melted into it.
Nice.
Sled dogs use fats the way that humans use carbohydrates, so that's their quick and easy energy. So we'll stop and snack them a few times with either that or some dry kibble sprinkled on the snow. If it's warmer out, they don't need the fat so much as they just need the calories of kibble. And by sprinkling it on the snow, we force them to eat some snow and get a little water in there as well.
Excellent. So that was pretty much the typical day. What could you encounter out there that would make it a not typical day out in Denali?
Things that we encounter that are different from what people might expect. Wildlife, of course, always adds to the excitement. And people always ask us about bears, and I remind everyone that in a normal winter, bears are sound asleep and hibernating, so we don't really usually encounter bears. Okay. Wolves are something that also people often ask about, and we really don't have issues with wolves. We've seen or heard them way off in the distance, but they don't really interact with our dogs. They'll howl back and forth at night in camp, but that's about it. When we're on the trail, the most common thing we're going to see, ptarmigan are very exciting, and man, they can really surprise you, and they come bursting out of the snow. So that gives us a good burst of speed if the dogs see the ptarmigan. And then moose and caribou are the other things that can really change the day or surprise us. typically the dogs will give me a lot of advance warning.
Yeah.
They smell or hear those wildlife long before I ever do, and will stop. And the barking of the dogs will typically encourage those animals to eventually move off the trail. But we give them their space. It's their park first and foremost, so we try and give them space. And typically just knowing that a moose or a caribou is out there is enough to give a dog team a good burst of speed.
Yeah.
But thankfully, they usually want to follow and stick to their normal broken trail. They don't leave the trail to go chase after those animals. Other things that can really make it interesting are just the weather or the conditions that we see in winter. Howling winds. It's not uncommon that snow will fall, and it's such light, dry snow that a huge windstorm comes through and blows everything clear. So the trails that we thought we had are suddenly gone in bare tundra. I know you're familiar with that on the north boundary. And then the other thing that we encounter that really surprises people is actual either open water or overflow. And overflow is a phenomenon that can often happen when it's really cold out and the ice is freezing to our riverbed bottom, so it's getting much thicker and pushing down on that layer of flowing water underneath the ice. And what that water does is it comes up through the cracks and flows on top of the ice. Typically, we can recognize overflow from a distance because we'll see that steam, and we'll know that we want to steer around it. But that's certainly one of the surprises on the trail that people don't often imagine for us in winter. Then there's all sorts of happy surprises like the northern lights being out, or just gorgeous sunny days, calm weather, a good snowstorm just when we need it.
Excellent. Well, we do have some questions from our live audience that I want to get to before we end up this morning. All right, the first one is, when the dogs get adopted at age 9, they have not yet lived in a house. Are they tough to housebreak?
These guys are actually quite well housebroken after all their time hanging out here in the kennels building and then coming into the cabins with us in winter. And typically I'll take the puppies home when they're about Zahnie's age or a little bit older. They'll do some sleepovers with me at my house. It's just really important for our dogs to be exposed to as many different environments as possible. So these guys are actually really comfortable and usually make the adjustment pretty easily to a household. Stairs are sometimes a challenge for them. But in terms of needing to communicate with people to go outside and things like that, or being comfortable and happy, the park sled dogs, I think you can attest to this, they love being inside. They love human attention, and that's really not a difficult transition. But we do still look for households that are going to give them a really active daily lifestyle. We want somebody who's going to get them out for skis or bikes or hikes or runs. They are not a good just sit on the couch house pet. They still have a lot of energy even when they retire. We want to make sure that they're still getting that exercise.
All right, excellent. And we got little Zahnie here, and he's by himself. He was the only puppy in this litter this year, and one of our questions from the audience was, will you be adopting some youngsters from another kennel so Zahnie will have playmates?
That is a good question, and that is definitely something that we've been focused on, is wanting to give him all the attention and training that his litter mates would normally provide for him. So he's definitely had a lot of different people in and out of the pen with him, and pretty soon he'll start to interact with all of our other auntie and uncle sled dogs in the kennels to help give him a lot of that same stimulus that a litter mate would. I have been in discussions with other kennels in Alaska. There's just a few kennels that we share breedings with. These large freight hauling sled dogs are pretty rare these days. So I have been discussing with them, but a lot of them were hopeful to adopt puppies from our litter this year. So there's a lot of us right now trying to figure out if there are any sources of other puppies, and we'll just have to wait and see.
Excellent. All right, just a couple more questions before we wrap up this morning. You touched on our 2 million acres of wilderness earlier, and that's a pretty special and unique thing that we have in Denali National Park. And how do the dogs fit in with helping preserve and protect that pristine wilderness out here?
I think that really is one of the things that's most special about Denali in summer, is that opportunity for solitude and unconfined recreation. You know, you can go out and choose your own route and choose your own adventure, and you can take that freedom and multiply it by 100 in winter. You know, the chances of seeing anybody or anything else out there is really rare, and for our visitors who are coming in winter, we want to make sure that they're getting that utmost level of wilderness experience. And I think for them, dog mushing is so much a part of the culture and tradition of the North that encountering a Park Service dog team out there or being able to get information about current conditions on the trails from our kennel staff after we've been out in the park is really helpful for them in trip planning. But it also adds to their wilderness experience, whereas in Alaska, one of the things that can be really hard to find is places that are snowmobile free. Snowmobiles are a great means of accessing the vastness of this landscape, and that's something that people really value in Denali, is that we have that non-motorized space where they can just be out on skis or ski joring or with their own dog teams and truly appreciating that quiet that is the heart of Alaska in winter. And I think that's pretty amazing, and the dogs really help to preserve and provide that experience. I think they also really inspire our visitors with the fact that they are truly working dogs, and every project that they do is really dedicated to that idea of preserving the wilderness values and wilderness spirit of this place. So.
All right. Excellent. Well, that's all our time for this morning. I'd like to thank Jennifer Raffaeli, our kennels manager here, for taking the time to answer some questions about the sled dogs here in Denali. And, of course, thank Sylvie and our little pup, Zahnie, for hanging out and entertaining us as well. And thank you all for tuning in this morning.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. All right.